And then anyone who wants to come can come, and you can just talk to people. That's all you'd have to do. Like a woman came to me early in my practice. Her brother had committed suicide, and she thought she should have known he was suicidal on that day.
Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David, and welcome to all our listeners throughout the world and galaxy. This is the Feeling Good podcast, and this is episode 406. We have our beloved Matt May joining us again.
Hey, Rhonda. Hey, David.
Hey, Matt. Long time no see.
And we're starting a practical philosophy month, and I'm sure that David will do a fantastic job of introducing that. I thought I would start by reading an endorsement that we got, just a brief one, and you could wax philosophical about this endorsement.
Okay.
And this is from Al, and Al wrote, just briefly, I started using the Feeling Good app yesterday. I'm so happy it's on my app store in Europe. I've already recommended it to clients, and I've received positive feedback regarding its effects. Al.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you, Al. We greatly appreciate that. Yeah, for those of you in the U.S., it is available now in the app stores, and may be available soon for web also, where you can just use it on your computer.
Oh, wow.
So and we're getting some good.
I didn't even know that was an
Yeah, we're
option.
getting some good results from it. There's a little Obi bot in it. Obi was my teacher, my cat, my beloved one, and he can be your teacher too. And then there's a lot of classes and lessons. There's some cool things in there, and a lot of people are getting rapid and fairly dramatic reductions in negative feelings from the Feeling Great app. So if you haven't had a chance, you can take a free ride and see if you like it. And then if you want to purchase a subscription for a year, it's not very expensive. And if you can't afford it, just contact us and we'll give it to you for free. We don't want anyone who wants it to not be able to get it and use it. And one other quick commercial message, and we'll make this one real short, but the intensive is coming up August 8 to 8, 9, 10, 11. That's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and there'll be 2 evenings there, and then Sunday until noon at the South San Francisco Conference Center. And it's the first time we're doing an in-person intensive in 5 years because we had to give up during the COVID pandemic. So we're bringing it back, and it's our greatest teaching of the year. And so if you'd like to learn about team from A to Z and learn how to do this high-speed treatment of patients and get, you've heard Rhonda and David and Matt and David and Jill and David on podcasts, you hear people in 2 hours getting a complete elimination of symptoms, and that's what team is aiming for with people who are depressed and anxious. And if you'd like to learn how to do that, that's what we're going to teach at the South San Francisco Intensive. Plus, you'll be able to work on your own issues too, because that's part of becoming not only a good therapist, but to say nothing of becoming a great therapist, you've got to have done your personal work and found your own personal enlightenment. So you'll have a chance to do that there too. Where do they go to find out about it, Rhonda?
They go to www.cbtintensive.com.
So www.cbt, cognitive behavior therapy, but just C, letter B, letter T, intensive.com, and then you'll get all the information there. So hope to see you. You can come in person. If you want to come in person, move fast because the seating is strictly limited to 120, and it's filling up very rapidly, especially by the time this podcast comes out. There's likely to be very few live seats available. You can also come online at a 50% discount. So if you're in India or wherever, you don't have to travel as you've had to in the past. We never had it online before. So you can come online or in person, and it's going to be a terrific 4 days for you. So hope to see you.
Okay, David, we're starting the Practical Philosophy Month. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. The Practical Philosophy Month is that it started out, I was a philosophy of science major at Amherst College, and I was always, challenged by these philosophical problems like, do humans have free will, or is there such a thing as a self, or is the universe real, or is the universe one, and things of that nature. And I read a book by my senior year by Ludwig Wittgenstein, the Austrian philosopher. And one of my college roommates told me to read it, Phil Allen. He was a physics major, and he was incredibly brilliant, to say nothing of the fact that he was one of the humblest, nicest guys around. But he was really brilliant, and I was trying to figure out what to do my honors thesis work, or whatever you call it, your senior year in college. And he said, well, there's this book by Ludwig Wittgenstein, and you could do your dissertation on that, or your thesis. And he said, it's really cool because there's two things about it. Number one, it's rumored that it contains the solution to all the problems of philosophy. And it came out in 1950, right after Wittgenstein died. But the other thing about it is it's rumored that there's only 7 people in the world who can understand Wittgenstein. And so if you can read that book and understand it and write your dissertation on it, when you have to defend your honors thesis or whatever, they won't be able to challenge you because there's probably no one on the faculty who understands that book. So you'll be kind of in the driver's seat. So I thought, man, that sounds so cool. And so I picked up that book, Philosophical Investigations, and I read it and I studied it, and I couldn't understand it. But it was about very simple things, and it was just a series of numbered paragraphs. It wasn't even a book. It was just notes they found under his bed in a metal box under his dormitory room in Cambridge University, where he taught toward the end of his life. It was notes that he had for this weekly seminar, and he put them in there thinking if they had any value and the building burned down, maybe someone would find that metal box and find the notes and find them of value. But he struggled with depression, which makes me very sad. He was considered, many people considered him the most brilliant man in Europe, and his father was the wealthiest man in Europe. And when his father died, he became like the Rockefeller of Europe. He was the wealthiest man in Europe, and he gave all of his money away in about a week or something like that, because he thought it was, would be the source of evil or something like that. And he never published anything when he was alive, and he suffered from severe depression. And he had 3 brothers he had 4 brothers, and 3 of them committed suicide. And he spent much of his life in suicidal depression. And he thought when he was depressed that his work was rubbish. And now he's become known, as probably the greatest philosopher who ever lived. And but I couldn't understand that book when it was just about kind of trivial things like the word game. He was saying, think about the word game. Now, what's the essence? What's the true meaning of the word game? And he says, well, what do you have to be a game? And he says, well, maybe you have to have two teams. Is that the essence of a game? Two competing teams. He says, but then you've got a game like solitaire. So there's not two teams, there's not even a team, there's just one person. And he thinks, but then how about the dating game? And then how about the game of life? Or we say of someone, he's a boxer, he's really a game boxer. And you think of all these different words, the names of the word game, and some have overlapping meanings, and some don't overlap with any of the others. And those are just all the ways we use that word game in the English language. And then he would say, are you ready now to give up the free will problem? And I would be thinking, not really, dude. I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And there were all these little numbered, essays on, he says, think about a bricklayer. What is a bricklayer? Imagine there's a master bricklayer. This is how he started the book. And he has an apprentice who's helping him. And he's building this beautiful brick wall. And every now and then he shouts, brick, and then the apprentice brings him another stone to add to the wall. And he says that's all they're really doing. The old guy's building this wall, and the apprentice is learning and handing him bricks or stones when he needs them. And then he says, now do you see the error that Aristotle made 2,000 years ago or 2,500 years ago? And I would think, no, I don't. I don't have any idea what you're talking about. And then he'd go on to another little essay, and he'd say, my only dream in life was to write a philosophy book that consisted of nothing but jokes. But the tragedy of my life is I never had a sense of humor. And I read that. I thought that was really funny because a lot of his little essays, once you understand them, they are like jokes. They are funny. But I just couldn't understand the book. And spring came, and it was getting time to do my dissertation. And I was walking across the Amherst campus, and I saw some fellows, throwing snowballs through an open window. It was really mean. And I got really, really angry. And then I suddenly saw what Wittgenstein had been saying. And I saw the solution to all the problems of philosophy that I had been plagued by. And so Wittgenstein's dream was that if his students would only understand what he was trying to say, they'd give up philosophy. So that's why I gave up philosophy, was because of Wittgenstein. And I went to medical school. He thought you should do something practical. And I always wished I could have written to him or talked to him when he was alive and said, I understand no one understood you and your students didn't understand you. And I can imagine how lonely you were. But I want you to know I got it. It took me 6 months to figure out what you were trying to say, but I got it. And so I gave up philosophy, and I hope you'd be proud of me because I did something practical. I went to medical school. I wasn't a pre-med student. It was horribly uncomfortable for me, but I made it through. But then later on, I came to realize that the cognitive therapy I got so involved with was very much like Wittgensteinian thinking. And that it has made a tremendous impact on my life and my thinking. And so I thought it'd be fun to have a practical philosophy month and talk about how Wittgenstein would have solved these, or resolved really these problems, because he didn't view philosophy as valid. He viewed it as mental traps that people get into, much like people with obsessive compulsive disorder obsess about things. And he was trying to develop a treatment for philosophers to be able to let go of these things with good reason, to see why and how to let go of them. And but that's the same really that I'm doing when I'm working with people with depression and anxiety disorders. Cognitive therapy is also all about thinking errors. And Wittgenstein kind of pointed the direction for that. But I've always been sad because he never figured out how to use his philosophical breakthroughs on his own thinking. And that didn't develop until after he died. And shortly after he died, then Albert Ellis in New York developed his rational emotive therapy, which was a huge shift from psychoanalysis, a radically different way of doing therapy. And then Beck kind of copied Albert Ellis, and he called it cognitive therapy. But all of this work was flowing naturally from the work of Wittgenstein. And those philosophical problems still plague people today, because people today still have trouble understanding Wittgenstein. And he was kind of like the Buddha. People can't understand him because it's so simple what he's trying to say, and it's so basic that it's almost like invisible to people. And I can understand his loneliness and his frustration when he was alive. But it's the same thing that when we're working with patients, try to get them to see that what them telling themselves doesn't make sense. Like, I'm a worthless human being, I'm not good enough, I'm inferior, and so I thought we'd attack some of these classic philosophical problems, but put it into a practical sense, so it's not just philosophical nonsense for people, but you can see if you're struggling with depression or anxiety, how this might have something in it for you, and also how this kind of bizarre philosophical thinking has permeated, like the DSM and the way the established psychiatric profession thinks about patients, and how it has a kind of potentially a negative impact there as well. So there's a lot of practical implications from all of this. And so today we're going to kick it off with the free will problem. And I'll briefly state two ways of thinking about the free will problem, and then we'll get into BSing about it and stuff like that, and maybe have some fun with it. But all of us, we think we have free will. Like, you see this pen, I think I'm just going to drop it, and I did that, and it fell on my clipboard. And so I have the idea I did that of my own free will. But then for hundreds of years, people have struggled with this and thought, well, but how can we have free will? And there's a scientific aspect of the problem and a religious aspect of it. The scientific aspect is that we all have to follow the rules of physics, or the laws of the universe. And we're doing that at every moment of every day. And so, like, even now, my brain is, causing me to do what I'm doing. And I can't violate any of the laws of physics. And therefore, I have to be doing what I'm doing at every moment. And therefore, I can't have free will. That's one version of it. Now, you can concoct that in a lot of ways. And Matt, you have a cool way of explaining it also, which we'll get to in a minute. But then another version is the religious version. When I was little, I was a minister's son, and so I was taught that God is omniscient, omnipotent, and all-knowing. And omniscient means, omniscient, omnipresent, and well, all-powerful. I'll just say the simple words. God is all-powerful, God is everywhere, and God knows everything. And so religious people have said, since God knows the past, present, and future, God knows what we're going to do at every minute of every day, and we can't do anything other than that. Therefore, we have no free will. That's the free will problem. And later on, I'll tell you, what I consider to be the solution to that and the other problems of philosophy. But that's it. And so we could start there. But just to say right off the top that the one emotional aspect of this is that a lot of times people feel extreme guilt for some screw up you did in the past. And like a woman came to me early in my practice, her brother had committed suicide, and she thought she should have known he was suicidal on that day. And so she told me that therefore it's my fault that he died, that I didn't save him, and therefore I too deserve to die. And so she was also considering killing herself. And that would be an extreme example of guilt when we're blaming ourselves. But if we don't have free will, then perhaps we can say, I couldn't have been doing differently from what I was doing that day, and therefore it's not my fault, and it's maybe a way of escape from her suffering. And the other potentially useful application, if you think of it that way, is people who go into rages, road rage, or rage at people who are different and want to kill other people, and then we get mad at them, saying they shouldn't be like that, they shouldn't have those values that they have. But then you can think, well, that's like saying a lion shouldn't kill a deer when it's hungry. Lions are programmed to do that, and similarly, we're programmed to do what we do, and therefore, just as lions can't escape all of the hundreds of millions of years of evolution and programming that they've had, we can't either, and therefore people can't be doing other than what they're doing, and therefore we can accept with sadness, bad behavior in others, but it's nonsensical to be judging people because they don't have free will. So those would be some beginning to dip into kind of an ocean of relevance of some of these philosophical problems to emotional issues. And at this point, I will now shut up, having talked too much, but that's kicking off our practical philosophy month, and we'll try to talk about these things on the philosophical level, on the emotional level, and then on the level of the way psychiatry and psychology are structured, and perhaps not the best way. And so now I will turn it over to my two fantastic colleagues.
David, that was brilliant. I share your experience trying to read Wittgenstein and philosophical investigation.
Oh yeah, did you feel that same
I found
frustration?
it just baffling.
Or did you get it right away?
I was extremely frustrated.
Yeah.
I skipped around a lot trying to get, where's the point
Yeah,
here?
yeah, right. Me too. Yeah, you just flip through the pages. Doesn't make any difference because they're all unrelated, all those numbered things.
The one that actually helped me was when he said, why is it that the road that goes up the hill is the same as the road that goes down the hill? And I kind of got it there, and I highlighted that part of the book, and sometimes go back and reread it. But yeah, thanks for kicking off philosophy. Is it month or?
Yeah, Practical Philosophy Month. We're gonna
Great, and we're doing some stuff on free will.
free will, and I had a list
free
of
will
them,
problem.
but one of the one was, does God exist?
Yeah, that's a good one, and you actually helped me more than the book understand Wittgenstein when you summarize simply that you can't answer a meaningless question.
Yeah, right.
That if the terms haven't been defined or if it's not used, that you can just be kind kind of cheating at the language game.
Yeah.
Is that what dawned on you when you saw people throwing snowballs through
Well,
a window?
I never connected it, but he got his first insight when he was walking past a soccer game. Because, see, he had written this book as a teenager that he sent to Bertrand Russell, and then Bertrand Russell distributed it throughout Europe, thinking it was some great thing. It was impossible to understand, called Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. And but Bertrand Russell said this is some kind of incredible genius, and that book spurred a lot of the 20th century philosophy movements. But Wittgenstein left. Once he sent that to Bertrand Russell, he thought he'd solved all the problems of philosophy, and so he was trying to get out of philosophy because it was like an obsession with him, and he was.
It's like the mafia; they keep pulling you back
Yeah,
in.
that's right. That's right. And then he went on to try to live a practical life, and he tried to teach school children, and he had never finished college. They were so wealthy, he had tutors when he was a child, but then he didn't so much go to schools. And he tried to teach grammar school, and he got fired because he was violent with the kids because they couldn't understand him either, and he would get frustrated. So then he thought, I'll live as a fisherman. So he moved to Norway and lived in a fishing village. But he couldn't survive that way because he didn't know how to fish. And, he didn't. I mean, you have to have a whole family, to live as a professional fisherman and things like that. And he was kind of just doing his thing. And then somebody told him that a Swedish economics student found a flaw in that book that Bertrand Russell had been distributing, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. And he became very depressed at that point because he thought it was that it was a flaw. And so then he went to apply at Cambridge to be an undergraduate, although he was older because he'd been, doing all these things to try to find his way in life. And so he thought, well, I'll apply to be an undergraduate at Cambridge. And somebody in the admissions office found his admission application and brought it to Bertrand Russell because they knew Bertrand Russell had been wondering who this person was who had sent him this manuscript years earlier that Russell thought was so great. And then Bertrand Russell said, well, bring him to my office. And so Wittgenstein was excited to meet this, famous British philosopher who he'd kind of idolized. And Bertrand Russell said, we're sorry to tell you that we can't admit you to Cambridge. And Wittgenstein was very disappointed and said, well, why not? Why can't I be an undergraduate here? And Russell said, because you're already recognized as the greatest philosopher of the 20th century. And Wittgenstein said, yeah, but there was an error in that book that I sent you. And that's why I have to study philosophy and try to find another way to answer these questions. And Bertrand Russell said, well, no, we're going to give you a PhD for that book you wrote, so you won't have to go to college or graduate school. And we want to make you a full professor in the Department of Philosophy. And Wittgenstein said, no, I can't do that. I can't teach in a classroom because I don't know anything. What I thought I had figured out was wrong. And they argued back and forth. And finally, Bertrand Russell made a deal with them and said, we'll make you a fully tenured professor. And you won't have to teach in any classroom, but you have to have a seminar once a week in your dormitory room. And then anyone who wants to come can come, and you can just talk to people. That's all you'd have to do. And so he agreed to that, and then for the next 10 years, all of the famous European philosophers would go to Cambridge and try to cram into his dormitory room, and he would have dialogues with them, which was like the philosophical investigations you were reading. And that's the things he was telling people. And he would kind of shout at people and get frustrated because they couldn't understand what he was trying to say. But that's when he crafted that book. And but it was sad. He developed prostate cancer, and I think he thought he maybe didn't deserve treatment, and he became kind of homeless. And he finally went to a doctor, and the doctor said, "Well, where do you live?" And he said, "Well, I don't have any place to live." And the doctor says, "Well, you only have a few weeks left to live." And the doctor said, "You can come and stay at my house, and you can die at my house." It was just so sad, because he didn't realize the impact that he had, and now he's viewed by many, as any who can understand it, as the greatest philosopher of all time. I think of him as the man who killed philosophy, got rid of it. He found the answer, but it was just so sad. But he said he made
Very close to you, David. I'm feeling very close to you right now, David.
He
And just in awe of your ability to know someone through their writings. And
he
have sympathy and empathy.
The doctor's wife befriended him and was with him, in his dying moments. And his last words, he just said, "Well, tell them that I had a wonderful life." But he suffered. Another problem he had. He was gay, and it was the time when you weren't allowed to be gay, and there was so much shame associated with it. And the neat thing about him is he loved detective magazines and Western movies. And after his seminar, he'd rush off to the theater and watch a Western movie. But I don't know if you've been in my office. I have his book, Norman Malcolm's memoir to him, called Ludwig Wittgenstein, a memoir. And I keep it right there on my shelf with this, and you can see him right on the cover of that book. And it was just a beautiful tribute that his favorite student, Norman Malcolm, wrote that book. And that's what helped me understand it. That also helped me when I got that book and saw how Norman Malcolm talked about it. But I'll tell you what his insight was, and then I'll shut up so you guys can talk. But because it is so simple, most people, they just can't understand it. But the idea, when that soccer ball hit him in the head, was that he thought, well, maybe language functions not to name objects in external reality, but we have a series of what we call language games. And different people use language in different ways in different settings. And the only meanings of words are the way we use them in everyday language. And what philosophers do is they pluck words out of the context, the many contexts. So they'll try to think, what's the essence of a game, the word game, as if there is some eternal correct thing that a game is. And there isn't anything like that. It just, that's game. It's just a sound that comes out of your mouth, and we can use it in any way we want. And when you think about it like that, what does free will mean? Well, it has many meanings. You have freedom to vote in America, freedom of speech. You don't have so much of that in Russia, because if you say the wrong thing, you can be arrested or killed. I hope we don't get to that in America. It's heading in that direction, sadly. You have free indicating, like, if you buy 6 bottles of Coke, you can get the 7th one for free at the local grocery store. They're having a sale. We know what that means. And the word will, has many meanings, many uses. And so in all of its natural settings, these problems don't exist. Are you free to join, Rhonda, are you free to join us for the Sunday hike one of these days?
I sure
Yeah,
am.
how about you, Matt?
Yep.
I would like to.
Yeah, but now we're not talking about some supernatural freedom, from the laws of science. We're just saying, let's get together and do some hiking and eat some dim sum and just really love being with each other. That's all I'm saying. And that is the solution to all the problems of philosophy. But it's so basic, people don't grasp it because they keep thinking in this lofty, arrogant way that, there's this thing called free will or this thing called a self, things of that nature. And then they try to define these things and pontificate about them. And, if you ask a taxi driver, what do you think about the problems of philosophy? He'll just tell you, I'm trying to concentrate on getting you to your destination right now. Like he'll tell you that sounds like a waste of time. And that's a real simplistic way of thinking about it, but that's exactly what Wittgenstein came up with. It's just language out of gear. And so
It can be very distracting language,
Yeah.
too. It can be negative thoughts of all different varieties.
Yeah.
Can be dismantled, realizing that, this actually doesn't make it's not meaningful language. Like, am I good enough?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Am I good enough? Yeah. But we get enchanted by language, and then we suffer because we get trapped by language, and that's what depression is as well. And I feel like a loser. I feel like a worthless human being. Well, if we try to define what's a worthless human being, it has no meaning. It's just an empty. It's just an empty set there. How much do you have to achieve before you're a worthwhile human being? It's nonsensical. And to let go of these constructs is what we're trying to do when we work with people. Instead of beating up on yourself and telling yourself you're not good enough, you've got a life to live. Hang out with someone awesome like Rhonda or Matt, or do some fun shit like what the Buddha recommended.
When I think of free will, this is probably completely off the subject, and you can tell me I'm like, I think of advertising. And how when I go to the store and I buy something, I think I'm doing it from my own, desire, but sometimes I'm doing it because I'm being influenced, and my will is being influenced by the sophisticated advertising campaigns that guide me toward one product or another.
Yeah, that's cool to think about. And Matt, you're the great expert on hypnosis and suggestibility too, and we can certainly use the power of suggestion to cause all kinds of weird and crazy experiences in people.
That's very true. Yeah. So I like what you were saying, Rhonda, that I think they made it illegal to insert these mini clips into movies that showed like a delicious looking glass of Coca-Cola, because it would, without people being aware of it, they would get the suggestion to go buy some Coca-Cola, and there would be a long line of people suddenly right after that little invisible, you don't even know you've seen it, suggestion that you're thirsty for some Coca-Cola. And so I think we're constantly being influenced in ways that we're not even aware of. And it does draw into question, is there free will? And we'd have to define it I think Wittgenstein would be rolling over in his grave right now if we didn't try to define what we meant by free will, and there would be no way to test it either, whether it's there or not there, if we don't define it. And we may just get stumped here. There may not be a way to define what that is. If I were to credit a philosopher today, it would probably be Sam Harris.
Be who?
Sam Harris.
Oh, uh-huh.
And he wrote a book on this topic called Free
Oh.
Will.
Is that about the same thing?
It is. It's very well titled, coincidentally.
Yeah. It's what did he have to say?
One of his quotes that I like is that we cannot decide what we decide. That we can all make decisions, like you pointed out earlier. I can decide to drop this pen or not, and I think his main idea is that you just cannot decide what you decide, and if you could, that would be free will. But if you can't, then you don't have what you think you have when you're angry with yourself, let's say, and you're thinking, I shouldn't have done that. That to realize, in fact, you couldn't have done anything differently. That the atomic structure of your brain in that moment is what made the decision, not your free will or a self or anything like that. And so it can resolve some upsetting feelings, and you can discover what those are if you ask yourself, would I feel differently towards someone who murdered my family than towards a tornado that killed my family? Would I have a different set of feelings towards the tornado than the person? And if you do, it's likely that you're imagining that the person shouldn't have done that and should have chosen something else. If you feel a sense of contempt or rage or anger or a desire for vengeance, it's probably because you believe that they had free will when they did that, and they chose to do it, and they're to blame and responsible. And if you wanted to get rid of those feelings, you could in a variety of different ways. For example, you could dismantle the word murderer and realize that there is no such thing. Or you could test the theory of free will and see if you have it. And when you realize that you don't have it, then you don't blame other people. You have access to a freedom from contempt, rage, anger, a violent desire for vengeance.
So you'd be kind of in Sam Harris of the ilk that we don't have free will, and to find that's a different arena from the one I'm in. But to go into your arena for a minute there, that would be a similar to the Buddhist notion of trying to see things through the eyes of the other person. That had we been in their body, we would have done the same thing that they did, and also the technique that we use sometimes in team therapy called forced empathy, to see why the other person is doing what they're doing. Would that be a fair summary of kind of?
I do agree with that. I also think this idea has appeared many, many times in many different places. I think in the Bible there's a saying,
right
there, but for the grace of God go I.
Yeah, sure. Right.
Or even Christ being tortured and crucified said, forgive them, they know not what they do.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so if you'd like to have that kind of peace in your mind, then you can experiment with and study, and try to get curious about whether you're choosing your experience right now or if it's happening.
And we certainly are under the influence of millions of years of evolution and preferences and things of that nature. And it's undoubtedly the case that many people are born with a much greater disposition, in all probability. This may not be politically correct, but greater disposition and attraction to violence and aggression.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the nature model.
Yeah.
That our experience is dictated a lot by things that happened long before we were born,
Yeah.
and that we didn't control, and so we at least didn't choose that portion of what our brain is in any given moment.
Yeah.
Robert Sapolsky also wrote a book called Determined that explores this topic if people are
What was
interested.
his book called?
Determined?
Determined. Oh, yes. What was his argument exactly the same?
Similar, yeah. I think the cover shows some billiards.
Oh, yeah, sure. Billiard balls, yeah.
Yeah, like physics,
Yeah.
sort of like an argument around
Right.
there's no ghost in the machine
Yeah.
operating it. It's
Well, that I think you've done a really tremendous job of explaining, current thinking that humans don't have free will, and thank you for that. You've been very, very lucid and persuasive, and you're kind of getting us into that mindset of, oh, maybe people don't have free will. My own position is a little different from that, but I think people will love what you're saying, and certainly anything that gives us greater compassion and less hatred for other people and less hatred for ourselves is going to be, helpful for
I'm
the
a little more
psyche.
skeptical because without an experience the words are very confusing. I think it's a bit like reading Wittgenstein that there's another set of experiences or experiments that you can run that can help see what I'm trying to say more clearly. I would also say that the method that actually strikes me, the methods that strike me most in team that approximate this idea, one of them is reattribution, where you're studying what are all of the different causes for something that we think shouldn't have happened.
Right, yeah. Like the other
And when
theory,
we
I got
do,
turned down for a date, and that proves that I'm a loser. And we actually are going to treat somebody with that exact belief in a week or two and put it on a podcast.
oh, is
Yeah.
that right? Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Great, yeah. The live work is always the best.
Say that again?
I think the live work is always the
yeah,
best.
yeah. Absolutely. Do you want me to give an alternative point of view, which will seem worthless to you?
That sounds intriguing. Yeah.
Oh, David, I can't wait.
Yes, let's say something worthless.
The I don't think this is a matter of debating or winning or losing, but just the Wittgensteinian position or the David thinking on this, for better or worse, was that the three of you, Matt May, Sapolsky, and Sam Harris, have become enchanted by the idea that free will doesn't exist, and that's the use that you have of, again, free will has been taken out of its context of the word free or the word will, have been pulled out of the context of ordinary language and put into some metaphysical thing where we're going to figure out, do we have it or do we not have it? And my own experience of that is that the question of do we have it or not have it has no meaning, because I don't know what it would be like to have free will or not to have free will. So,
That is such sweet relief
pardon me?
from the burden. That is such sweet relief from the burden of trying to answer meaningless
Yeah,
questions.
right.
And you can step out of the prison of, trying to answer that stuff
Yeah,
and be free.
yeah,
And that's helpful at a
yeah,
cognitive, philosophical level.
yeah.
I,
And a personal level as well. And when I'm working with people who have guilt or rage directed at others, the idea that that person didn't have free will is not a method that I would use because it seems like selling highly dignified snake oil, you might say, something like that. But if it's something you feel comfortable with and believe in, then you can use that in maybe in a productive way in your clinical work as extra tools, as you've been saying.
yeah, to say there's no free will is just nonsense. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
If you experiment, though, and try to hold your attention on one thing for 1 minute and realize you can't decide to do that, it's humbling. Or if you try to not understand what I'm saying right now and you realize that you can't force your brain not to understand what I'm saying, it's helplessly deciphering the noises I'm making into some sort of meaning and that you're reacting to it, but you're not choosing how you react to it.
Yeah.
Similarly to when you would use the relationship journal and you would point out, oh, you forced the person to respond this way.
Yeah.
And the reason is that they didn't have free will.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion on it.
Yeah.
But you have to do the testing. You can't linger in the land of language because that's where we get lost. And it doesn't matter. There's no point trying to answer philosophical questions.
I don't think I got this idea of experimenting that you referred to.
Yeah, so
there's
you'd
a
have to
lot of
understand
things
what-
that we can't do. Like I remember I took table tennis lessons for 20 hours a week for 6 months once. And there were things I was trying to get my body to do that I wasn't very successful at. But I didn't feel like I didn't have free will. I felt like I was too old to learn some of the newer approaches to table tennis. I didn't have the coordination, but I didn't experience it as a loss of free will. I experienced it as a deficit of skill or a certain kind of coordination.
Was it frustrating for you, or
No,
Did
it
you-
was no. I just decided after 6 months. I took a break from psychiatry, as you know, because I thought I could make the Olympic team if I got a coach. And I found out I was wrong. I did get a great coach who I got 20 hours a week of coaching from one of the top a top table tennis player. But no, it was disappointing. But it was kind of funny though. But it was just accepting where I was at, and I was pretty old, and the people who were coming up and coming for Olympic status were like 12, 14, 16 years old, and I was double or triple that. But it was fun, and on a few occasions I could get into what I was trying to do, and then I suddenly was just killing people, but I couldn't hold that. I couldn't do it consistently. But it was a little frustrating and disappointing, but it was kind of a learning experience too, and I could understand very much how people feel when they're like young and in school, and they don't have a certain mental ability, and the other kids are getting picking up on things really fast, and they can't do it. That was the position that I was in, and it was kind of a healthy learning thing, I would say.
Right. Yeah.
You can't do everything that you want to do. You know what I mean? There.
Right. Exactly. And another maybe another way that this concept maps onto team for me at least, and I don't think it does for you, David, and I'm glad it doesn't. I'm glad you're expressing a dissenting opinion. But one way where I see it is that we can't just force ourselves to think differently. We have to practice that. We do. All of our patients have to do homework every day to look at their negative thoughts, get them down on paper, talk back to them, and only through that practice can they have a better mindset.
Yeah,
over
right.
time. Yeah. But there's no.
We've got to reprogram our brain to have new circuits.
Yeah, we can't just decide to have different circuitry.
Yeah.
In our brain.
Yeah, we'll have, and even after we've recovered and found our enlightenment, we'll slip back into those old patterns repeatedly, and have to use the same.
We can't decide not to.
Yeah, and that's right. So we're talking a lot about acceptance also, as well as commitment and training. We could have a therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy. I think
that's
catchy.
Brilliant. I think we should market it.
Yeah, it could catch on. Well, Rhonda, you going to pull this together for us, or?
I'm going to say that you guys are really deep thinkers, and I like how you both have brought it back to real life examples. What you just said, how does this map onto team, and the use of languaging and languages, and what you're doing is sparking a lot of opportunity to think about how these concepts fit into our everyday lives. It's not just random theories, but really how can we make these practically fit into our lives, these concepts of free will, or do I have a self? And I imagine that's what this whole month is going to be about.
Well, something like that, except my position is you don't have to make this fit into your life because there's no meaning there.
We could title this "Don't Listen to This Podcast."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I mean, I guess I just think I'm like super practical.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, that's the Wittgensteinian solution.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, how much time are we going to worry every day about having free will? I don't know what that means. To have free will or not to have free will. I know what to do something, be free to do something that I want to do, and we're very blessed to have so many beautiful options to living here in America, and people living throughout the world in war zones and horrible circumstances, and to feel a lot of gratitude for that. So in a sense, we have more freedom, more options than most people in the world, and to be grateful for that. But the worrying about whether or not people have free will, I wouldn't know how to worry about that, because I don't know, when you put it in that abstract context, do we have free will? Without a context, it doesn't mean anything. And another thing is similar to team therapy. That let's say someone says, I want to find out what is the meaning of life. Well, we might say, at what time of day would you like to know the meaning of life? Or to put it differently, is something bothering you, dear? Or, what is the problem in your life we could work on? We need something real. And once they work on something real, like maybe a problem with the boyfriend or the girlfriend or whatever, the conflict with parents, and when that thing gets solved, then, I'm not so concerned about the meaning of life anymore. And that's also like a Wittgensteinian solution. But when I was a psychiatric resident, we did not do that. We let people ramble on and on and on, exploring their childhood or talking about all the problems in their life as if there was something going to emerge from that, like a phoenix bird was suddenly going to rise from the ashes, and I never once saw it happen. And so I think the Wittgensteinian aspect here in team, we're focusing on a specific problem at a specific moment in your life, and all of your problems will be encapsulated there. And going after abstract concepts like self-esteem or the meaning of life or things of that nature are generally going to be kind of a waste of time.
And to continue my sort of enchantment with this idea that in fact there's not what we imagine we have when we believe that we have free will. If we imagine that we can make some decision different from what our brain is deciding, is that we don't want to accept that reality because we like to feel proud of our accomplishments. We like to imagine that we chose to do this amazing thing that we've done, and we kind of like to blame others too. We like to get angry with others and say that they shouldn't have done that thing. They had some other different choice in the matter. But if you want to overcome those feelings, this is one way to do that. There are many ways, but reattribution or discovering there's no free will can help let go of those negative feelings. And those are my thoughts on it.
Awesome.
Well,
it's often an agenda-setting problem.
Yeah.
And one last thing I would say is that I think you like the idea of people that free will would have a meaning and that we wouldn't have it would have a meaning. You like that, and so you want to cling to this issue. And
I like the feeling of forgiving and letting go of hatred and anger towards anybody. Oh, it just feels so nice to get that piece from that level.
It does.
And
Absolutely.
another lesson there from team that I had forgotten about is that if someone is motivated to have a particular belief, then, like I'm a loser, then you can't talk them out of it. You can't help them. But you can try to reduce their resistance and kind of come in through a side door, which is what we come in with team. But it's the same in philosophy, that if you want to have or in religion, if you want to have, or in politics, if you strongly want to have a particular belief, then all the evidence in the world will not deter you from that belief.
And you end up back in the prison of your own thinking.
Yeah.
Feeling bothered by it.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay, shall we say sayonara?
Now would be a good time to do that.
Okay.
Sayonara.
Well, thank you, Matt and David. This was really an interesting podcast to not listen to and to let go of as soon as we're done listening to it.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you next week for part 3 of the Philosopher Week month.
If we choose to continue with it.
Exactly.